Hello and welcome to Froch on Fighting. I'm Carl the Cobra Froch, former unified super middleweight world boxing champion and International Boxing Hall of Famer. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it, that? Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget you can also follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from. Give us a follow. This episode is brought to you by Cobra Casino. So I just want to start with a fight I've just watched, and that's Inoue, the monster. And if you've not seen him, when you watch him, you'll realise why they call him a monster. And he just fought AJ Dubois from Ireland. And it was I wouldn't say it was an amazing performance from Inoue, but he got the job done in very, very good fashion. So Inoue, the monster, is a 4-weight world champion. He's actually a 2-weight undisputed world champion. And is he unbeatable? Well, he looks unbeatable. And the fight ended at the start of round 7. Listen, Inoue is sharp, he's compact, he's got a nice tight defence, he blocks shots with his gloves, but he also got quick reflex slips, he slips back, he's on his toes. He's on his toes a lot when he's in range, but he walks in kind of flat-footed. He puts pressure on with his feet, walks in with that tight defence, and he looks solid. But I think with his speed and his counter-punch, his accuracy, and the fact that he's punching hard body and head and looking to counter most shots that come at him, he's just such a good fighter. I mean, he doesn't really put a foot wrong. He gets clipped with the odd shot. I've seen him on the floor once before. He climbed up to win in emphatic fashion. TJ Dubois, he was 37 years old. And I just think, I know what it's like to be 37. I chinned Groves at Wembley in front of all them people, and I was approaching my 37th birthday. And to get through the camp at that age, I mean, Dubois, it's difficult. Dubois actually pulled out at the start of round 7. At the end of round 6, he took a bit of a shrellaking. He was on the ropes. He was in the corner against the ropes. And he took about 5, 6, 7 shots, body and head. He was fighting back and he was in the fight as well. He was staying in there and staying with it, but constantly under pressure. And at the end of round 6, he got hit with a big combination. And he did actually look, to be fair to him, because people will say he quit. I'm not going to say he quit, but he did pull himself out, which is classed as a quit. But this Irish kid, he's not going to quit. He's not going to quit, really, unless there's something seriously wrong with him. And he saw at the end of round 6, he twinged as he walked back, sort of gingerly back to his corner after round 6. You could see he was holding his back and he was walking with a bit of a limp. So he twinged his back in round 6. He still came out for round 7, which shows bravery, but he was under the cosh straight away at the start of round 7. And you see him step back, sort of do an awkward little bend over, and he was touching his back, and then when the combination hit him, I don't know if he was going to try and complain about a shot that was kind of borderline side, but it was more like a liver shot. It was down in the breadbasket, and I think it hurt him. And then you saw him sort of on unshaky feet and walking back to his corner or back to the ropes, and then he took a knee. So he was definitely injured. I wouldn't say he shitbagged it. I wouldn't say that. I'd say that he pulled himself out because his back was injured. People are going to say it's a quit, but it sounds harsh. But at the end of the day, Inoue was on top of him, let him go of big shots, was in the second half of the fight. And at 37 years old, that's when you start to feel the age, you start to feel the pressure. And Inoue was just getting cleverly closer and closer to him, just starting to back him up, staying in range, counter-punching him, and kind of landing at will. So the writing was on the wall. I don't think if his back didn't go, he was going to get beat, maybe stopped. He would have definitely lost on points by a big score. So all I can do is say, listen, fair play to Dubois. He had a go. He came, he tried, because he did try. He had a little bit of success. But the monster, Inoue, was just far too good for him. And he's probably going to be far too good for anybody in that weight division. So just to finish up on Inoue, that's 28 wins, 25 by way of El Sparco. I know we've got technical knockouts in there, but on paper it's 28 wins, 25 knockouts. And people are now saying, and I could be one of them, that Inoue is pound for pound the best in the world. Number 1, pound for pound, that's in every weight division. So you take a pound of flesh from Inoue, take a pound of flesh from, who would I say, Terence Crawford, Alexander Usyk. Let's just stick with the top 3. For me, that's the top 3. Would I put Inoue at number 1? 4-weight division world champion, currently undisputed in 2 weights. You could argue he's the best in the world, pound for pound, but Usyk was dominating and dominated, undisputed at cruiserweight. Made that transition to heavyweight. You've seen him lick AJ and put a whooping up Tyson Fury, and they're the other two best heavyweights in the world. I know we've got AJ fighting Dubois soon. So it's what you like. It's subjective, the pound for pound. Terence Crawford, we know what he is. I mean, he's just just a brilliant fighter, fantastic. And there's a few other good ones as well, but if I went on the top 3 pound for pound list, it's got to be out of, and this is in no particular order, Usyk, Crawford and Inoue. Let me know in the comments what order you would put them in. I think I'd probably have Usyk at number 1, but you tell me. So there was a debate on TalkSport earlier. It's quite interesting. You've got Simon Jordan and Eddie Hearn on there with Jim White, and they're discussing as to whether or not we actually need promoters in boxing. Now we've got the inclusion of Turki Alalshikh from Saudi Arabia. And Simon correctly pointed out that all of a sudden now, Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn and the promoters that previously couldn't even be in the same room, couldn't stand to look at each other, just try to put like hurdles in front of promotions and fights getting made as much as they could, just being disruptive as much as they could, because that's why some of the big fights never happened, and you never got the fights that you wanted to see in the ring because the promoters are against each other. Then all of a sudden Turkey comes along, and let's be honest, it's all about the old Bunsen burner. Because the money's there now, all of a sudden these guys are working together, stroking each other's backs and tickling each other's feet, aren't they? Best friends. And let's be honest, it's just down to the money, the bottom line. So if the money's still going to be there for the big shows, the argument and the debate was, do we need the promoters? Because if you've got the broadcaster and you've got the fighter, then why do you need a promoter? The first fight with George Groves happened at the Manchester Arena, and yes, it was promoted and it was built up, and Matchroom and Eddie Hearn did a fantastic job. But then my fight, this is as an example, by the way, talk about myself again, why not? My fight with George, the rematch at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 people, that one sold itself out in 3 hours. That one promoted itself. So what did the promoter do? Just cut through the red tape, jump through a few hurdles, got a few licenses in place, but that could be done by Turkey's team, essentially. So it's an interesting debate. Obviously the lower level fights and the fighters that aren't capturing the public's imagination, aren't for the big world titles, they're going to need to be promoted, and the small hall shows are going to always need promotion. But the big stuff, especially, I don't know what Turkey's end game is, but if he's on about taking it over and creating a league for boxing, similar to what Dana White does with the UFC, then the whole landscape of the business will change, and maybe he'll bring in his own people. Maybe there'll be a job for Eddie Hearn and Bricktop, but maybe it's not promoting, maybe it's being an advisory level for the fighters or bringing fighters to the table, because once fighters come out of contract, if Turki Alalshikh's there saying, well, hang on a minute, you don't need to renew your contract with these promoters, come to me and I'll make sure you get paid X for this fight, and we'll be looking at putting you on in Riyadh or at the Wembley Stadium like here's the next one. It's interesting. And is it worrying time for the promoters? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I'm sure they've made enough money up to this date, but who knows what the future holds? Who knows what Turki Alalshikh is actually up to? Only one man does, and that's him. So the only thing you can compare it to is the UFC and Dana White. Dana White's one man, and he runs the UFC. He doesn't need promoters. Obviously, the fighters have probably got managers, they've got different sponsorships. But is Turki Alalshikh the next Dana White in the boxing world? Potentially. And I'll tell you what as well. Then, if you did have a league and you did just have one world champion in each weight division, you wouldn't have these paper title fights like what we've got coming up soon at Wembley Stadium between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois. And I know all the AJ fanboys out there sending me messages saying, oh, this shouldn't be, you can't say it's for a British title or it should be for a world title, and trying to compare me with Lucian Bute. Lucian Bute defended his IBF title, I think it was 10 times before I fought him and beat him, and took his 0. So don't even try and compare my fight with Bute with Dubois AJ. But what I am saying is, if you win the world title, AJ or Dubois, you can't really call yourself a world champion, because Alexander Usyk's the world champion. And maybe a league in boxing, maybe Turki Alalshikh being the next Dana White, will sort that problem out and iron it out. One world champion per division. Then all of a sudden you're changing the game and maybe getting rid of the need for these promoters. So another talking point on TalkSport with Simon Jordan and Eddie Hearn this morning was actually Anthony Joshua becoming a world champion again. And I don't often disagree with much what Simon Jordan says. I like the way he sticks it on people, and he's honest, and he's very articulate in the way in which he delivers his argument, and he backs it up well as well. But he did say that, you know, if Anthony Joshua, for example, wins the IBF title, which I think he's the favourite to beat Dubois, but we'll do the pre-fight preview closer to the fight here on Froch on Fighting. But he did say if AJ beats Dubois and becomes a 3-time world champion, is in the realm of immortality. Sorry, Simon, but that's bullshit. Immortality, so you're comparing him with the likes of Lennox Lewis, for example. I mean, come on. Lennox Lewis, you can't compare that CV, and you can't say that by winning a vacant title that's been stripped off the champ makes you a 3-time world champion. That's the problem I've got with this title being fragmented or being vacated or taken off the actual real champ, which is Usyk. That's my main problem. If AJ beats Dubois, he's going to hold his hand up with that IBF belt and say, I am now a 3-time heavyweight world champion. And everybody with a brain is going to be looking, saying, hang on a minute, didn't you lose to the guy that you've just took that belt off? And boxing shouldn't be like that. And that will be solved, that will, if we have the boxing league. If Turki Alalshikh does step in and start running boxing like Dana White, you won't get this. And I think Simon Jordan probably didn't fully understand what he was saying there, because he's not in the realm of immortality by beating somebody's belt that is taken off them. And I'll go back to what I said earlier before the fanboys get upset, start writing in to the Cobra, bitching and moaning about I fought Lucien Boutte for the IBF title. He had 10 defences. He was unbeaten IBF champion. So I beat the champ. Okay, I just lost to Andre Ward, but then I offered Andre Ward a fight for the unification, which he didn't want. That's fact. You can check that. So there's no argument there. And also the WBC as well. I fought for the WBC title, which was vacated by Joe Calzaghe because he didn't want a piece of the Cobra. But look what Jean Pascal went on to do. In his very next fight, 1 or 2 fights, he was WBC champion. He beat Adrian Dacuna. Then he beat Bad Chad Dawson, the guy that nobody wanted to fight. He went and beat him. He was still a world champion, Jean Pascal was, over 10 years later. In fact, we're talking about people that went on to win more titles after I beat them. Jermaine Taylor was still a world champion 6 or 7 years later after I defended that WBC title for the first time in America, when I climbed off the canvas in round 3 and then beat him in the dying seconds of the last round.
30 seconds left. Can the former world champion hold on? Taylor in trouble. Froch punches, and it's over. I'm going back to England, Mom, and I'm keeping my title. Carl Froch shocks the boxing world as he stops Jermaine Taylor in the 12th round. What a fight!
And that, my fellow friends and followers and lovers of Froch on fighting, is the reason that I am in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. You know the haters that hate me. This is why. But anyway, I feel like I've made my point. Another quite big talking point was that Turkey wants to see the fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. This is the fight that we wanted to see many years ago. I mean, I was talking about it before Froch on Fighting relaunched years ago. Was it 5, 6 years ago? Apparently Eddie said they've agreed terms. They've just got to sort out the date and the venue. And I mean, how much bullshit was that? Because the fight never happened. If Tyson Fury, there's a couple of moving parts to this. Because if Tyson Fury loses to Usyk, then that fight's going to be easier to make. But do we want to see the two guys that have lost to Usyk fight each other? It's still an interesting fight, let's be honest. Anthony Joshua fighting Tyson Fury. It's still a fight that we're going to want to see. But even if Fury loses to Usyk, but if Tyson Fury beats Usyk, they're going to have to say to Usyk, look, you're going to have to wait and step aside, give him some step aside money whilst that fight happens, because Tyson Fury will be champion and Usyk's going to want another bite of the cherry, and it'll be 1-1, and we should see the trilogy. So I suppose before we see the trilogy, Turkey Sheikh's asking AJ and Fury to fight, which I don't know if that would happen, but I like the sound of it, I like the concept of it. I'm not sure about this fight being in England though, because he said it'll either be at Wembley Stadium or Saudi Arabia. I think one thing you can bet your bottom dollar on, if Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury fight, that will be in Saudi Arabia. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that fight's going to be out in Saudi because it's a big one. People are going to want to see it. But I go back to, again, if Fury loses, that fight's easier to make with AJ. But is it a fight we're hungry for? Is it a fight we want to see? We're going to see two losing heavyweights, and I want to say losing heavyweights, two guys that have both lost to the actual champion, Usyk, fighting for what? For their right to fight Usyk again. Usyk's 37, Tyson Fury's past 34, is he 36? He's getting old as well, and I don't think he's got many fights in him. AJ's younger than both of them, but still mid-30s. I think the only guy that's going to potentially benefit from all this is going to be Daniel Dubois, depending on what happens with Anthony Joshua, because he's the youngest. He's still in his mid-20s. I think he's like 26 years old. So, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going off for this to actually happen. But Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua fighting each other for no belts if Fury loses to Usyk. Is it something we want to see? Let me know in the comments below. I'm a little bit bored of it. I'd still watch, but this fight should have happened years ago, and it's not, which is a big shame, really. But yeah, obviously, on the flip side to that, if Anthony Joshua beats Daniel Dubois, which is I don't even want to say. I'm going to wait for my preview. If Anthony Joshua beats Dubois and Tyson Fury somehow manages to beat Usyk, then he'll be the IBF champ, AJ, and Tyson Fury will have all them belts back. And then we've got a massive fight, haven't we? We've got AJ, Fury for the undisputed, huge fight, big fight. It's not as big as it would have been, but it's still a big fight. It's for all the belts. It's the two big British heavyweights. But one thing's for sure, that fight won't be happening at Wembley Stadium. That fight will be in Saudi Arabia. But if that was to happen, I'd feel for Usyk because it'd be 1-1, wouldn't it? Tyson Fury loses to Usyk, then Fury wins the rematch. Usyk's going to be chomping at the bit saying, listen, this is a trilogy now. It's 1-1, best of 3. But you know, if Turkey gets his way, which he usually does, I wonder why. You know, the money will be there. Usyk will probably take step aside money because I'm sure there'll be a rematch clause or there'll be something in the contract that says that Tyson Fury lost the first one. If he wins the second one, that's 1-1. We need to see the trilogy. But you know yourself, money talks and nobody else gets a say because the money tells people what to do. It makes people become best friends. It makes people stroke each other's backs. It makes people hold hands. They just get in bed when the money's there. So poor old Alexander Usyk would be sitting back. Obviously, say poor old Usyk, he'd probably get a big old fat paycheck to sit back. But that could be the last we see of him, and that would be a dying shame because if it was 1-1 with Fury and Usyk, we'd want to see the trilogy. But at 37, 38 years old, would we see Usyk back in the professional boxing ring? Maybe not. So that's it, pretty much a wrap. Before I go, a little bit of housekeeping. A lot of people are asking for this leg day that I did with Dorian Yates, the Shadow, and I'll tell you what, he absolutely hammered me in the gym. Listen, I'd never take a dive, you know, and you know I'd never quit, but I didn't give it full 100%, but it was still hard. I'd not trained legs for so long, but I think the Shadow could see that I was kind of making out it was hurting me more than it was. So he stacked a few weights on. But anyway, when the footage for the leg day is out there, we're going to be putting it out on this channel, and I'll also do a link and maybe a collaboration with his Instagram. So you will see it. It did happen the leg day. It roped me off. My legs were burned. I couldn't walk for 2 days, and it was good fun. Something else as well. Michael Bisping, he's definitely coming on the channel, but he's just had a neck operation. He's recovering well. I spoke to him last week, about 5 days ago. He's on California time, so it's difficult, but we're definitely going to be getting our heads together. So you'll see that as well. That's something else to look forward to. And let me know in the comments who you want me to get on. I can get some special guests on. I've got some power here on Froch on Fighting. The Cobra, the 4-time world champ, the Hall of Famer. 120,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. We're growing together. We've got this voice. We've got this free speaking voice that people are loving. And I'm loving the fact that 99.9% of the comments that come in the comment box are positive. And I also love the 0.1% of negative people because I give you a bit back. I'll have a debate. I actually had someone messaging me the other day telling me how much they hate me and they can't stand me and cows agony would have wiped the floor with me. And I actually responded to him, and all of a sudden he was like, oh no, but I'm actually your mate and I respect you and I respect your career, and obviously you're a legend in the game. And I thought, you know what, even half the haters that are out there actually secretly deep down love the Cobra. So that's one to think about next time you're about to give the Cobra some beef. But like I said, there's not many negative comments, only positive. This has been another episode of Froch on Fighting, and we will see you next time.